The National News Desk, locally covered, nationally connected.
We have to get Hamas, but I think they're going to be able to do this.
A peace deal over the war in Gaza still in limbo. The 20-point plan President Trump says has the backing of Israel.
Right now, it's really just getting the crime under control.
Reporting for duty, the Trump administration ramps up its crime crackdown in more cities. Plus, FBI Director Kash Patel sharing new information about Operation Summer Heat. His exclusive interview, including where the National Guard could go next. From the nation's capital, this is the National News Desk, America's News. Now, I'm Dee Dee Gatton. Thank you for joining us. On this weekend edition, we take a look at the big headlines of the week, and we look ahead at what to expect, starting with the 4 big stories we've been following this week. The federal government shut down as lawmakers argue over who is to blame. The U.S. ramps up its military efforts against South American cartels. The Trump administration deploys federal troops to cities nationwide, and Secretary of War Pete Hegseth lays out new military standards. But first, President Trump sets a Sunday deadline for Hamas to agree to a deal to end the war in Gaza or else. This as a 20-point peace plan laid out by the White House promises to bring peace to the Middle East. We're told Hamas has accepted some of the elements, but not all of them. Our national correspondent Kayla Gaskins explains what this peace deal could look like.
An end could be in sight to the war between Israel and Hamas.
So this is a big day, a beautiful day.
After Monday's meeting with President Benjamin Netanyahu, President Trump announced Israel agreed to the new peace plan outlined by the White House to end the war in Gaza.
When our two countries stand shoulder to shoulder, we achieve the impossible.
According to Trump, this plan was crafted with the support and input from European allies, along with leaders from many Arab and Muslim countries, including Saudi Arabia, Turkey, Qatar, the UAE, Jordan, and Pakistan. Hamas still has to accept the plan.
Again, we're not quite finished. We have to get Hamas, but I think they're going to be able to do this.
Getting Qatar back on board was key to getting the peace talks back on track. Qatar is virtually the only country who can negotiate with Hamas. They were angry at Israel for violating their sovereignty by striking Hamas leaders living in Qatar. Netanyahu called Qatar's leader to apologize while meeting with Trump Monday. Qatar releasing a statement after the phone call, underscoring they are ready to continue engaging in efforts to bring an end to the war in the Gaza Strip. The White House's 20-point plan calls for the release of hostages, the removal of Hamas from power, the withdrawal of all Israeli troops from Gaza, and a long-term path towards creating a Palestinian state.
This agreement that we're talking about will lead to a sustainable, long-term peace.
The White House is also encouraging Palestinians to remain in Gaza during the rebuilding process, a sharp departure from Trump's earlier idea of relocating the population. Part of Trump's plan includes setting up an apolitical board of peace as a temporary governing body of Gaza during the rebuilding process. The board is to be made up of Palestinians, international experts, and world leaders, including former British Prime Minister Tony Blair. The board is to be led by President Trump. In Washington, I'm Kayla Gaskins reporting for the National News Desk, America's News Now.
The Department of Homeland Security says a judge is keeping a removal order in place against Kilmar Abrego Garcia. On Wednesday, a judge denied the Salvadoran national's request to reopen his deportation case, calling the motion untimely and saying there is insufficient evidence he would be deported to another country. DHS praised the judge's decision and called Abrego Garcia an MS-13 gang member and human trafficker, accusations he and his wife have denied. He has 30 days to appeal.
Counsel, regardless of who is watching, whether it is the nation or a single individual, we must fulfill our roles with integrity, civility, and diligence. I encourage each of you to give your very best to this case.
A court hearing was held this week for the man charged with killing political activist Charlie Kirk. Kirk was shot and killed last month while speaking at a college campus in Utah. 22-year-old Tyler Robinson faces several charges, including aggravated murder. Attorneys for Robinson asked for more time to review evidence in the case before deciding if they will seek a preliminary hearing. The judge agreed and scheduled the next hearing for October 30th. Robinson is expected to be present in the courtroom for that hearing. The U.S. has carried out another strike on a boat operating in the Caribbean suspected of being a narco-trafficking vessel. Secretary of War Pete Hegseth making that announcement Friday. This as President Trump declares the country in a non-international armed conflict against drug cartels, according to a memo obtained by the Associated Press. Friday's strike follows 3 deadly strikes by the U.S. military against alleged drug smuggling boats. The White House is insisting its efforts have ended a crime emergency in Washington, D.C., with plans to move federal troops into several other American cities. As the National News Desk, Christine Frizzell explains, the nation's capital is the blueprint for the future of crime crackdown.
The presence of federal troops on the ground in Memphis contributing to an effort that's resulted in 93 arrests and 28 illegal guns seized in the first 72 hours, according to Attorney General Pam Bondi.
Right now, it's really just getting the crime under control in Memphis because it has been out of control.
But the effort has also included escalated efforts by Immigration and Customs Enforcement, also playing out in Chicago, with Portland, Oregon reportedly next on the list.
How about Portland, Oregon, where it looks like a war zone?
But local leaders insist the city has been undergoing a revival, pointing also to a double-digit drop in homicides. According to the latest FBI data from 2024, the city is ranked 72nd in violent crime.
We're not tolerating violence or vandalism, illegal behavior, but we also are huge proponents of free speech and for people to be able to travel freely and safely about the city.
Top Trump administration officials on the ground Wednesday in Memphis say they want to follow the example set in Washington, D.C., where federal troops were deployed for weeks.
The model that we did in D.C. worked incredible, and as you see, crime has plummeted in D.C.
Prior to the Trump administration, local law enforcement was barred from working with federal immigration authorities. But this video obtained by the Washington Post appears to show a D.C. police officer releasing a man who'd been pulled over for a traffic stop directly to a Homeland Security officer, a partnership the Trump administration is celebrating while others are not.
We never wanted MPD to go out on patrol with Homeland Security agencies, but they're part of the task force, and that should change.
Several of these state attorneys general have continued to argue the deployment of these federal troops into their cities is illegal, with lawsuits filed, and the hopes of preventing more troops from coming. I'm Christine Frizzell for the National News Desk.
By the numbers, nearly 40% of the more than 3,500 arrests made during President Trump's federal takeover of D.C. were immigration-related. That's according to data obtained by CBS News. It's unclear how many arrested by ICE have criminal histories in addition to alleged civil immigration violations. Trump's crime crackdown in the district began in early August. To the White House, where an offer for 9 colleges is on the table. Agree to our terms, and we'll give you priority access to federal research money. The memo says the schools would have to freeze tuition for 5 years, cap international student enrollment, and ban using race or sex in hiring and admissions. They include Vanderbilt, the University of Pennsylvania, Brown, MIT, and 5 others. The Trump administration says it doesn't plan to limit federal funding only to schools that sign the agreement. Also, Democrats on Capitol Hill, they are scouring through their financial records after former FBI Director James Comey's indictment. Axios reporting that they're trying to gear up for a legal fight as President Trump pushes to prosecute some of his opponents for mortgage fraud. The White House says this is just the beginning.
There's certainly going to be more indictments coming over the next 3.5 years of the Trump administration, but we're always going to let the law drive this stuff and the facts of the case and not political motivations.
Comey was indicted on charges of making false statements to Congress and obstructing an investigation. He says he's innocent. Coming up next here on the National News Desk, California becomes one of the first states with AI regulation laws, the potential punishments looming for those who don't comply. Also, FBI Director Kash Patel joins us to discuss a critical law enforcement operation aimed at taking down violent criminals. Two girls are recovering after walking away from a dangerous crash with non-life-threatening injuries. Police say a 13-year-old girl drove drunk and crashed a stolen car, look right here, while an 11-year-old was in the passenger seat. Reports say the teen driver went the wrong way on the interstate before self-correcting and driving off at over 100 miles per hour. The 13-year-old's blood alcohol concentration was recorded at 0.183. She will face DUI charges, according to officials. A flight attendant was injured after two Delta regional jets collided on the taxiway at LaGuardia Airport in New York. The airline says the wing of an aircraft that was about to take off hit the fuselage of an arriving aircraft Wednesday night. The flight attendant is expected to be okay. Delta is working with the FAA and NTSB to review the incident. Operation Summer Heat was a coordinated effort by the FBI and local law enforcement to crack down on violent crime nationwide. Earlier this week, Armstrong Williams sat down with the FBI Director Kash Patel to break down the details and announce the results of that crackdown.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this very special edition of the Armstrong Williams Show, where our guest for the full hour is the Director of the FBI, Kash Patel, who, under his leadership, the Bureau launched Operation Summer Heat with local and federal partners, targeting the most violent offenders in Chicago, St. Louis, Memphis, and New Orleans and beyond. And for viewers new to it, set the table for this operation.
Operation Summer Heat was a 3-month surge by the FBI with our state and local partners. We started at the end of June, and we just wrapped up at the end of September. And what we did was follow one theme: crushing violent crime, one of this administration's key priorities. And we went into every single field office. We have 55 field offices scattered across the country. And today, we're going to unveil the results of Operation Summer Heat and what law enforcement can do when you let good cops be cops.
What is it that you find that all these cities have in common that is lacking?
Well, I think a quick historical analysis is important here. You have to recognize that there was an explosion in violent crime, and it didn't happen in a month or 6 months. It happened over the course of years due to the prior administration's lackadaisical approach against crime, and violent criminals took advantage of that. So the FBI, under my leadership, we came in and said, okay, violent crime's exploding. Everybody knows that. We see that. You can't walk around these cities anymore. People are getting shot. Kids are getting shot. Drugs are killing our youth. We need to do what the FBI is best at and crush violent crime. So we targeted all the major cities in the country. We called our state and local authorities, and we said, we need you all in as task force officers. You have the ground level intelligence. We have to attack the criminal enterprises where they start and their entire spider web of networks across the country. And that's the beauty of Summer Heat. We went everywhere.
You know, what is fascinating, what you're insinuating here, is that this is not possible unless all the strategic partners are on board. It's a collaboration between the states, their leadership, the mayors, the municipalities. Why is that so important, and why does that give you the kind of effectiveness in terms of the results that you're seeking through Operation Summer Heat?
Because there is no one federal agency or the federal government that can account for the safety of the entirety of the nation without our state and local law enforcement partners. You have to recognize the 1 million or so state and local law enforcement partners across our 50 states doing the job. They have the best relationships in the community. They have the ground level intelligence. They also have assets and resources that when we sync together with the Federal Bureau of Investigation, that is the most dynamic police force on God's green earth.
When you say going in with the Guard, I assume you're speaking of the National Guard. What role will they play? And have you, through your involvement in lowering crime dramatically in Washington, D.C., found the process and a formula to better use the National Guard to complement what you're already doing?
We absolutely have. Under President Trump's leadership, we needed the National Guard in Washington, D.C. You and I both know. We live here. Washington, D.C. was a hotbed of criminal activity. I mean, we had an assassination of Jewish students and interns. We had an intern from Congress get murdered. We've had so much drug crimes here. So rightfully so, President Trump sent us in quietly months ago to, again, set the stage. The FBI take 01 operations, phase 01, set the ground game intelligence, work with MPD. But in order to complete the mission, The president was right. We needed a National Guard to set a stable perimeter. That is the criticality of what the National Guard brings to this fight. We don't need them being law enforcement officers, and they're not. I want to make that crystal clear. What they allow law enforcement to do, the FBI, the interagency, state and local authorities, is to work safely within the city street corners to operate and conduct investigations, to bust into houses, to take bad guys off the streets, to seize firearms and guns. And so they don't have to worry that the next house over has another gang activity in it that might attack them because we didn't know about it. And that's the beauty of having National Guard. And they're going to be setting up these perimeters in all these other cities thanks to the president. In 3 months, Armstrong, Summer Heat had 8,700 arrests. In 3 months, Summer Heat had 2,281 firearms seized permanently off our streets. 3 months, fentanyl, 421 kilograms. By the way, that's enough to kill over 50 million Americans.
50 million?
50 million. On the low end, that's a conservative estimate. Lethal doses off that seizure.
Mr. Director, Kash Patel, thank you so much for joining us.
Armstrong, thanks for coming to HQ here.
California has signed one of the first bills to place new regulations on AI companies in the U.S. Governor Gavin Newsom signing the bill this week. The Transparency in the Frontier Artificial Intelligence Act requires leading AI companies to publish documents detailing steps they're taking to ensure safe AI systems and report AI-related safety incidents. Top players could face civil penalties for noncompliance. Americans say it's harder to afford groceries this year, which may not be a good sign for Republicans ahead of next year's midterms. A new Harris poll shows 47% feel that way. It's 50% for Democrats and 54% for independents. It's more split among Republicans. Overall, food inflation is up, coming in around 3.2% for the 12 months ending in August. YouTube has agreed to pay out a $24.5 million settlement with President Trump over his suspension from the social media platform. YouTube suspended the president towards the end of his first term after the January 6 attack on the U.S. Capitol, saying Trump's posts about the riot risked inciting further violence. Alphabet owns YouTube. It's also the parent company of Google. Construction for the White House ballroom has begun, with crews breaking ground and getting started on the 90,000 square foot project. But this is just one of many changes President Trump is making to the White House. Let's get Emma Withrow from the Fact Check team. So as I mentioned, there have been a number of modifications that the Trump administration has made to the White House. Run through some of them for us.
Okay, so for the most part, in the Oval Office, they added golden trim to the doorways and kind of a gilded presidential seal on the ceiling above the Resolute desk. They added 2 large flagpoles to fly huge American flags on the White House lawn. They revamped the Rose Garden and replaced the grass with some stone pavement. Trump said that some of the people who were walking their high heels were sinking into the lawn during events. They also added yellow and white umbrellas to go on that patio. And then obviously the biggest change is the addition of the 90,000 square foot ballroom, which is going to be expanded onto the East Wing. It's intended for state dinners and events, and President Trump said it's going to hold around 900 guests.
So we saw the renderings for that. One noticeable change is obviously those flagpoles. Trump, I remember saying that he was paying for that. What about everything else?
Yeah, so for the most part, they're covering everything with private donations or Trump himself. I mean, Trump personally paid for the gold decorations and, like you said, the flagpoles. As for the ballroom, White House says it's going to cost around $200 million, but that money is coming from private donations. And then for the Rose Garden, NPR says it costs $1.9 million, but it was also covered by private donations to the Trust for the National Mall. So no cost to the taxpayers.
All right, Emma, thank you. For more on this Fact Check team topic, Emma's going to join us with a history of White House changes and previous presidents' decisions to renovate or restore. And coming up next, using technology to make communities safer, the new AI tool used by Ohio law enforcement to keep criminals off the streets. Then, the community outcry after a nurse imposter gains access to critical patient information. The National News Desk team of reporters is bringing you the headlines from coast to coast. We're taking the pulse of America, and we start in Ohio, where a new AI tool is helping residents crack down on crime.
We ultimately depend on citizens of Ohio to get us information that will help protect our communities and our neighborhoods.
Ohio Public Safety Director Andy Wilson says they're always looking for better ways to report suspicious activity, but he admits it can be a challenge.
And a lot of times the person who would make the report doesn't know who to get the information to. They don't know how to get the information to the right person.
That's why the new Safeguard Ohio app was born. The new app and website have been in the works for years.
You can upload audio, video, photos, and it really gives us more timely, actionable intelligence where once we triage it, then we can get the information where it needs to go.
It uses AI to help collect crucial info, while a crime analyst determines the validity of the threat.
Marissa Jean Denton is accused of dressing up as a nurse and entering a patient's room last week. Metro Police say she reportedly worked at the hospital until January 2024.
Honestly, it's a little unnerving.
This police report says when the nurse left the room, Benton used a plastic syringe to draw out approximately 4 milliliters of propofol from an active drip attached to the patient. Officers note this could have caused serious medical issues for the patient.
It's kind of scary.
Officials say a hospital staff member stopped the act. But Sen tells me he still wants better safety measures. The hospital spokesperson tells us they have upped security and have additional training for staff on access protocols.
So what are some of the things that you would like to see?
Obviously, knowing who your co-employees are before they start work, have a, they scan their badge.
This was obviously an emotional experience for all of us in the region.
Across the region, communities have been coming together to pay tribute to the lives lost from the storm and to celebrate progress.
There are many other towns who are experiencing the same thing we are today, and also are having probably similar kinds of events to commemorate or remember what happened to us a year ago.
Here at home, the town of Weaverville hosting a celebration of resiliency, rebirth, and gratitude.
It's been a year, and it's been a hell of a year. It's been a lot, recovery has taken a long time. We're not completely recovered, but we are way ahead of where we were a year ago.
And over at Old Fort,
you guys came together. You helped your neighbor.
A community gathered for a ceremony of reflection to mark 1 year since Helene hit.
My heart was warmed and I was overwhelmed to see how this community came together. And we had one goal in mind, and that was to make this town whole again, and folks were there.
Coming up next here, it's an end of an era as AOL is pulling the plug on its dial-up internet service. We're back in 90 seconds. Taking a look at the top trending stories on our website right now, the NFL announced Latin superstar Bad Bunny will headline the 2026 Super Bowl halftime show. He becomes the first Latin singer to headline the event. And Jane Goodall, the world-renowned conservationist and primatologist, has died. She was 91. She was a global advocate for wildlife and the environment and was awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom in January. Also, international pop star Taylor Swift released her latest album, The Life of a Showgirl, on Friday. The album is available on all streaming platforms, Apple Music and Spotify. Those stories and much more available right now at thenationaldesk.com. By the numbers, pending home sales increased 4% in August compared to the month before. That's according to the National Association of Realtors. That's higher than the 0.6% economists forecasted. Officials say lower mortgage rates have more people going under contract. The average rate for a 30-year fixed mortgage dropped to the lowest it's been in about a year. It's the last call for AOL's dial-up internet. The service is no longer available and has been removed from its website. AOL brought the internet into households using dial-up with peak usage in the 90s and early 2000s. Broadband and wireless offerings toppled the empire as people switched over. Over 150,000 homes still use dial-up in 2023, representing under 1% of households. Ahead And in our next hour, the White House fighting back against pediatric cancer. The new order signed by the president sending millions in funds to battle the disease. You're watching the National News Desk, America's News Now. Catch us live weekdays from 6 a.m. to 11 a.m. and 10 p.m. to midnight Eastern Time, and anytime online at thenationaldesk.com. We'll be right back.
The National News Desk, locally covered, nationally connected.
Thousands of federal workers could potentially lose their jobs permanently during this government shutdown. The alternative plans from some Republicans as workers stay stuck in limbo.
The words I'm speaking today are making your heart sink. Then you should do the honorable thing and resign.
Shape up or ship out. The Secretary of War details his 10-point plan to overhaul the military at a rare gathering of top leaders. Plus, the American dream on its last leg, the precious milestone most in this country may now miss out on. From the nation's capital, this is the National News Desk, America's News Now. Thank you for being here. I'm Dee Dee Gatton, and the government shutdown will continue into next week after the Senate failed for a fourth time to pass a short-term federal budget. Many government employees continue to work without pay. They and those furloughed are waiting to see if they'll be impacted by the White House's plans for mass layoffs. National correspondent Atra El-Nishar reports.
Government shutdowns used to mean congressional leaders and the president engaging in tough negotiations while federal employees are furloughed. Now, leaders are not talking at all, and furloughs are turning into firings. President Trump calls it an unprecedented opportunity.
The Office of Management and Budget, as we've said repeatedly, is working with the agencies and our cabinet secretaries to identify where cuts unfortunately can and have to be made.
Most congressional Republicans are not eager to see thousands permanently lose their government jobs.
At the end of the day, the decisions are tough ones, and I've met with him. I talked yesterday at length with Russ Vought, who's the director of the Office of Management and Budget. Russ takes no pleasure in this.
President Trump on social media striking a different tone.
Russ Vought is the reaper. He wields a pen, the fun's and the brain. Here comes the reaper. Done to your babies. Comes the reaper.
The White House says Democrats are forcing their hand by not voting with Republicans on a short-term budget. But Democrats say their hands are clean.
We're not going to tolerate waste, fraud, and abuse in our government. And we've also been very clear to point out when agencies or when programs do not align with this administration's values of putting our country first.
They have already engaged in mass firings. They've done this outside of the context of a government shutdown.
The White House has not explained why the unprecedented move of permanent layoffs in addition to furloughs is necessary. Additionally, OMB Director Russ Vought continues to freeze funding for infrastructure projects in blue states, but has not explicitly tied those decisions to the shutdown. On Capitol Hill, I'm Atra El-Nishar for the National News Desk, America's News Now.
Taking a look over Capitol Hill, where multiple furloughed workers from the Department of Education had out-of-office messages blaming Democrats for the government shutdown, automatically sent from their email accounts without their consent or knowledge. Federal workers at other agencies say they were provided with suggested partisan language to include in their own out-of-office notices. Traditionally, agencies provide information on available services but stay away from partisan talking points. Despite the government shutdown, many key services and programs will remain available to Americans. Social Security and VA benefits will continue to flow to those eligible. Air traffic controllers as well as TSA agents will be required to continue working, keeping the nation's airports open. Postal services will also remain active. This requires several essential federal employees to work without pay until the government reopens. Along with the ATC and TSA workers that I mentioned, that includes Department of War and military personnel, federal law enforcement and emergency medical staff, as well as prison staff. Lisa Cook will remain working at the Federal Reserve for now. The Supreme Court said it would hear arguments in January. President Trump fired Cook from the agency in August, claiming Cook had committed mortgage fraud. Cook called the charges against her manufactured and a legal battle over the matter began. People who knew the shooter at a Michigan Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints say he hated the Mormon faith, this according to the Associated Press. Friends of Thomas Sanford say he started making his feelings known years ago after he came back from Utah, where he dated and then later broke up with a girlfriend who was a member of the Mormon faith. Speaking to CNN, a local city council candidate says he spoke with a suspect days before the attack.
And ultimately, one of his final statements to me were that Mormons are the Antichrist, and he said that several times.
And the FBI says the suspect smashed a pickup into the church on Sunday, shot at churchgoers, and lit the church on fire before he was fatally shot by police. The Secretary of War gathered top military generals and high-ranking officers from around the world Tuesday as he aimed to reshape military quality. National correspondent Matt Gelka takes us inside.
Please take your seats.
Hundreds of generals and military leaders from around the world were called to Quantico, Virginia, as Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth outlined a 10-point plan refocusing the military. And he started with the scale.
It's tiring to look out at combat formations, or really any formation, and see fat troops. Likewise, it's completely unacceptable to see fat generals and admirals in the halls of the Pentagon.
Hegseth promised new standards in what he called the Liberation Day for America's warriors. Men and women would be held to the same fitness standard for combat roles. High-ranking service members would also need to pass fitness tests. Beards and long hair are banned. The defense secretary said all promotions would be merit-based and frequently bashed what he called woke and diversity, equity, and inclusion distractions.
No more identity months, DEI offices, dudes in dresses. No more climate change worship. We are done with that.
Hegseth was trying to drive home his mantra of a warrior ethos for America's fighting force, with the president saying that defending the country was the most important priority.
Only in recent decades did politicians somehow come to believe that our job is to police the far reaches of Kenya and Somalia, while America is under invasion from within. We're under invasion from within. No different than a foreign enemy.
Hegseth admitted that new fitness standards could lead to fewer women in combat roles, something that Democratic Congresswoman and Air Force veteran Chrissy Houlihan says is the wrong message.
The message to me would be to get out. And we need every single person who wants to serve. This is an all-volunteer service, and we need people who have all kinds of capabilities and talents.
Hegseth told the generals and admirals in attendance that if they didn't like what he had to say about the direction of the military, they should do what he called the honorable thing and resign. Reporting in Washington, I'm Matt Gelka for the National News Desk, America's News Now.
The Pentagon plans to make scores of people in its headquarters take random lie detector tests. The Washington Post reports more than 5,000 uniformed and civilian workers would have to sign a strict non-disclosure agreement. The Post says the changes are an effort to weed out officials who are not loyal enough or give information to reporters. The Pentagon's chief spokesperson calls the report untrue and irresponsible.
The one person, of course, who we know has released not just unauthorized, but deeply classified information in this Pentagon is the Secretary of Defense. He did something that would get any private in the military thrown in prison.
Representative Moulton referring to reports earlier this year that Hegseth shared sensitive military details on the app Signal with unauthorized people. In Poland this week, the U.S. Special Envoy for Ukraine told the Warsaw Security Forum that Vladimir Putin is on shaky ground.
We're in a pretty good position with the Ukrainians, and Putin doesn't want to go there. And I think part of it is the fact that probably in his heart of hearts, he realizes he can't win this.
The comment comes after Russia once again warned the Trump administration supplying Tomahawk missiles to Ukraine would be a step towards a direct military confrontation. President Trump saying this week that his administration is close to a deal with Harvard University. It would include a $500 million payment by the Ivy League school. It comes 3 months after the elite university was accused of violating civil rights law by failing to adequately address anti-Semitism on campus. That resulted in Trump cutting federal funding and attempting to ban the school from enrolling international students. The school argued it had taken substantial measures to address the issue.
President Trump's changes to the White House have sparked controversy and outrage despite being paid for almost entirely from private donations. But how common are these types of changes to one of America's most sacred buildings? Let's go to Emma Withrow from the Fact Check team. And I know that you dug into the history of all of this. When you look big picture, it seems like making these little aesthetic touches here and there, it's pretty common.
Yes, definitely very common. History shows that pretty much every president and first lady has left their kind of stamp on the White House, sometimes in ways that were controversial at the time, but are now seen as kind of iconic. So according to the White House Historical Association, in 1902, Theodore Roosevelt, he renovated and modernized the White House and created the West Wing, which obviously is very iconic now to this day. In 1952, Harry Truman, he did a massive renovation that gutted and rebuilt the White House interior. At the time, that was for safety reasons, but yeah, the list goes on in terms of renovations and reconstruction.
And I think for many of us, we think of Jackie O, right?
Yes.
We think of, you know, the changes that she made in inviting the public inside to the White House, but she's just one of many, making it her own.
I know, yeah. Jacqueline Kennedy, obviously, Pat Nixon, Hillary Clinton, they all renovated the Blue Room. Lady Bird Johnson, she redesigned the East Garden and created the Children's Garden. Gerald Ford built the outdoor swimming pool. Michelle Obama created the White House kitchen garden on the South Lawn. There's plenty of, examples of this. It's kind of like they want to make their little finishing touch when they spend their time in office.
I love going back and looking at those old historical photos over the years and seeing how the White House has evolved. Emma, thank you. For more on this Fact Check team topic, including links to their sources, scan the QR code or visit thenationaldesk.com. So to come, our team of correspondents breaks down this week in Washington, from the Super Bowl halftime controversy to the deployment of federal troops to our nation's cities.
And welcome back to the National News Desk. Our Washington Bureau covers the nation's capital every day, and our team of correspondents reports on the important issues facing the country and how they impact you. The NFL's announcement last week that rapper Bad Bunny will be the headliner at the Super Bowl halftime show is stirring up political controversy. National correspondent Kayla Gaskins, why has this become such a political flashpoint? What is the Trump world saying about all this?
Well, Steve, Bad Bunny's no stranger to wading into politics. He endorsed Kamala Harris, for example, back in 2024, and he frequently pushes social norms such as posting for magazine covers and dresses. He's a sharp critic of President Donald Trump and especially of Trump's immigration policies. He's also mocked Trump through parodies in his music videos, and he notably snubbed the United States when he released dates for his upcoming international tour. That announcement coming down a few weeks ago over concerns that ICE agents would target his fan base, which is mostly Latino. Now, as a Puerto Rican, Bad Bunny himself is a U.S. citizen. He will, though, be in the U.S. for at least one upcoming show. That's the Super Bowl in Santa Clara, California. That'll take place in February. Now, a senior advisor for the Department of Homeland Security, Corey Lewandowski, all but promised ICE will be there. Take a listen.
Will ICE have enforcement at the Super Bowl for the Bad Bunny Super Bowl halftime show?
Benny, there is nowhere that you can provide safe haven to people who are in this country illegally, not the Super Bowl and nowhere else. We will find you, we will apprehend you, we will put you in a detention facility, and we will deport you.
Now, conservatives, including many in the Trump administration, are slamming this choice by the NFL as divisive and not for the Super Bowl audience. Critics say Republicans are nowadays getting upset over everything and turning into snowflakes, something that they once criticized the left of being. Now, Steve, this also comes as the NFL is trying to become more focused on expanding their international audience. They've been playing games overseas and in different countries in cities like Dublin, London, Madrid, Mexico City, and Rio de Janeiro, so you can see where the NFL is going. And this kind of fits into that sphere, but it is angering a lot of conservatives here in the U.S.
Yes, we will certainly be hearing more about Bad Bunny between now and the Super Bowl in February. National correspondent Kayla Gaskins, thank you. Meanwhile, President Trump's crime crackdown expanded to Memphis this past week as federal law enforcement and the National Guard arrived to assist local police in the city with the highest violent crime rate in the U.S. National correspondent Christine Frizzell, it turns out these crime crackdowns aren't just preventing violent crimes and homicides. There's another layer to the federal intervention addressing a different top Trump priority.
Yeah, it's really interesting, Steve. Remember, we saw just several weeks ago President Trump and his top officials declare a crime emergency in the nation's capital in Washington, D.C., sending in federal troops under that provision and recently declaring that the crime emergency in D.C. is over. But what we're seeing happen is not just, troops going in to assist law enforcement. What we're seeing is a whole lot of immigration enforcement actions going on. We've been seeing that happen in Chicago as well. One of the things that was interesting, though, in D.C., remember, was a sanctuary city, but under the Trump administration, there is now evidence that D.C. local police has been working, at least in certain cases, with immigration officials. This is something that at least people in the Trump administration are celebrating.
The model that we did in D.C. worked incredible, and as you see, crime has plummeted in D.C. Memphis has the highest violent murder rate in the entire country. Just this year alone, they have had 150 murders, and it's going to stop. We're all working together.
Yeah, so this is interesting. Memphis certainly does have. It is the #1 most violent city in America, at least according to recent statistics. And they sent in the troops there. And so that can be, they're saying that this is to deal with crime. And this is a little different because Tennessee has a Republican governor. You've got other places like Chicago, Illinois, Portland, Oregon. Already we're seeing lawsuits from attorneys general in those states saying, no, you do not have the right to send in federal troops for local law enforcement purposes. This violates the Posse Comitatus Act. They're fighting back. The Trump administration does not show any sign, though, of backing down, Steve.
National correspondents Christine Frizzau, Kayla Gaskins, great reporting as always. We appreciate your hard work as always. Back to you.
To New York City, where Sean Diddy Combs was sentenced to 4 years in prison. In July, Combs was convicted on 2 prostitution-related charges carrying a maximum of 10 years each. Prosecutors had initially asked the judge for an 11-year sentence. And the president signed an executive order to use AI to help fight pediatric cancer. The move puts up $50 million for pediatric cancer research, as well as an additional $50 million to the Childhood Cancer Data Initiative. He inked the deal surrounded by children, many of whom survived cancer themselves.
What you're doing today, Mr. President, means that kids like me will get better options and so much more hope for the future.
The president says he's also directing the federal government to fully utilize artificial intelligence to supercharge pediatric cancer research. A new report shows abortion rates in the U.S. have dropped in the first half of 2025. The Guttmacher Institute reports in the first 6 months of this year, there was a 5% decrease in abortions provided by clinics compared to the same time in 2024. The number of people traveling across state lines also fell by 8%. Data shows abortion declines were larger in states with bans after 6 weeks of pregnancy and in states with near total abortion bans. New reports show the American dream isn't what it used to be. The National News Desk, Angela Brown, shares how home ownership and stability are now out of reach for more and more families.
The classic rigid American dream, a house, kids, white picket fence. Is that definition slipping away?
I don't think that is as achievable as it used to be. I think it is far from it.
And Stephen Cates should know. He's a financial analyst for Bankrate. Their new survey found that 1 in 6 would-be home buyers have already given up.
The 2 biggest impediments that we saw from people was that they couldn't find something that they liked in their area. They couldn't find something they could afford in their area. And in their area is the most important part of that.
Housing is just one piece of the puzzle. A separate report from Investopedia says it costs $5 million over a lifetime to pay for a home, retirement, kids, a wedding, new cars, healthcare, owning pets. Dr. Jared Pension from Cedarville University says, reevaluate how we define the American dream.
Is the American dream about the outcome, or is it about the process? So is it about, do you have the opportunity to move ahead? Right, the question of, are you better than your parents?
But many are not feeling hopeful. A 2025 Pew survey found a median of 57% across countries believe today's children will be worse off than their parents, while only 34% think kids will be better off. In Washington, D.C., I'm Angela Brown.
Coming up next here, pumpkins with a purpose, how a seasonal activity is making a large impact on a local community. And the mysterious death of a missing woman baffles investigators. The search for answers and a murderer now intensifying. This is the National News Desk, America's News Now. We have reporters all across the country in your neighborhoods covering issues that matter to you. We are taking the pulse of America. And we start in Washington, where police are investigating a woman's mysterious death.
She's just the last person that deserved to have this happen to her.
It had been months since anyone had heard from 27-year-old Mallory Barber. Bothell police say she was last seen leaving her home in the Morningside Pioneer Hills area of Bothell on June 24th. Friends noticed immediately when she strangely went radio silent. Then a grim discovery the morning of September 15th in a wooded area hours away from Bothell off State Route 3 and Pickering Road in Mason County. Investigators say Barber's remains were found, the coroner confirming she'd been dead for months and appeared to have been shot multiple times. Barber's friends say they don't know where she was going that day or if she was planning to meet up with anyone, but she does have friends in the area. The Mason County Sheriff's Office is investigating her death and urging anyone to come forward with information that can help give Barber's loved ones answers.
Girl Scout troops across Western Ohio can now go back to operating out of churches. Leaders with the organization and the Archdiocese of Cincinnati have renewed their partnership after nearly a year. Even though the partnership ended last October, Archbishop Robert Casey says conversations between the two never stopped. The groups originally severed ties over a difference in moral values, with the church specifically taking issue with the organization's pride patch.
We've arrived at a place of understanding which comes through the ability to sit at table and dialogue and push through those moments where you might want to lean into difference rather than common ground.
Pulling up in Peacedale right outside of the Congregational Church is a tractor trailer. And inside, an assortment
Big orange pumpkins, there were 3,000.
of almost every kind of pumpkin one might imagine.
And then we have 3,000 to 3,500 of all these little pumpkins, white pumpkins and gourds.
That one's very big. With an assembly line consisting of more than 100 volunteers passing the pumpkins to their perch. Money raised goes to the Warm Center's Welcome House that helps the homeless or those families in need of social services.
So fun. Still ahead here, the crowned champion in Alaska, the underdog that won this year's Fat Bear Week. Also, as we just mentioned, Halloween right around the corner. The record projections for candy up next. Google and NBC Universal agreed to a short-term extension on their YouTube deal, avoiding an immediate blackout of NBC channels. The previous agreement expired earlier this week, but both sides say talks will continue. Google claims NBCU is demanding higher fees than it charges for Peacock, which could mean price hikes for customers. If channels go dark, Google says subscribers will get a $10 credit. Alaska's Fat Bear Week has a new champion, and his name is Chunk. The brown bear arrived at Katmai National Park and Preserve with a broken jaw. Park staff say it may never fully heal, but Chunk persevered and now weighs over 1,200 pounds. This year's competition, which highlights bears bulking up for hibernation, saw the largest voter turnout in its 11-year history with more than 1.6 million votes. Also, Texas researchers say they've identified the first known wild blue jay and green jay hybrid. Look at these photos. According to an Ecology and Evolution Journal study, the unusual bird was spotted in 2023 near San Antonio. Researchers say it has blue feathers and white spots on its wings like a blue jay and markings and vocalizations of a green jay. Scientists believe this hybrid is the result of overlapping habitats due to climate change. This Halloween, Americans are expected to spend a record $13.1 billion. The National Retail Federation reports that it's up from the nearly $12 billion spent last year and more than the record of $12.2 billion. 2023, the average person is predicted to spend almost $115 for costumes, candy, and decorations. And that'll be all for us on the weekend edition of the National News Desk, America's News Now. Don't don't forget, you can catch us live from 6 a.m. to 11 a.m. and 10 p.m. to midnight Eastern Time. Check our local listings. You can also watch us online and catch up with the latest headlines on thenationaldesk.com. Thanks for watching the weekend edition of the National News Desk. I'm Dee Dee Gatton, and from all of us here, have a great week.